First of all, I would like to thank you all for taking time to attend this presentation today. I'll be sharing with you my final project titled Effects of Summary Writing on Independent Reading. When thinking of an issue I felt important enough to research, I found independent reading in middle school to be a topic that is discussed frequently, especially on this campus. The great push for mandating that middle school teachers allow students independent reading on a daily basis is often debated as to whether or not this is considered to be best practice. There are many concerns with allowing students this independent reading time in schools. Are students actively reading during sustained silent reading periods that are held in English class? Is independent reading considered best practice when trying to increase comprehension skills? And how can teachers make sure that independent reading time is increasing students' grade equivalent reading level? Teachers want to be certain that if the class time is spent reading, students are actually benefiting from this reading. They want to see growth with every lesson that is taught. Independent reading should be evaluated and growth should be evident. Is this reading time increasing their comprehension skills? How can this be improved? One recent study by Sandin backs up teachers' concerns by stating that independent reading is meant to motivate students to read and build necessary reading skills. And while motivation is very important when reading independently, successful programs go beyond the enjoyment of the activity and into building accountability and instruction. There are other concerns about independent reading and comprehension in the middle school. How do we as teachers ensure that our independent reading program is successful? Today we hear many middle school teachers explain that students should have learned to comprehend before they arrive in middle school. And due to the intense curriculum, teachers do not have the time or the strategies needed to implement these skills with these students. In a 2012 study, it was noted that teachers expect students to have mastered comprehension strategies before they enter middle school, and so the focus of instruction fails to include comprehension. This seems to be an injustice to middle school students, those who have trouble with comprehension, because research states that as students get older, their reading comprehension must continue to improve because the text they encounter will be increasingly difficult. So how can these students be helped? One study stated that when trying to meet the needs of students with reading comprehension problems, it is found that targeted reading interventions in comprehension, multiple reading components, and word reading strategies are all proven to be successful. One alarming statistic states, with an estimated 6 million middle and high school age students reading below level, it is time to promote strategies that help independent readers. With that being said, it is evident that teachers need to utilize some sort of strategy to improve reading comprehension at the middle school level. So what are the strategies that work best with independent reading? A successful independent reading program focuses on providing students with ways to engage with the text while reading, and this leads to building comprehension skills within the reader. Teachers do want students to engage with the text, but again, they would like something that is easy and simple to implement. Educators want a simple strategy that can be used to build comprehension in older students, and summarizing is one of the most powerful strategies for promoting student reading comprehension skills. Many teachers do not feel that there has been strong research-based information on ways to improve comprehension skills during independent reading, and they are concerned that this much time spent on reading will negatively affect the standardized test scores. Some feel that students must show engagement through some type of assessment in order to show growth of this skill at all. So with this strong push for independent silent reading time in the middle school classroom, and the need to prove that time spent reading independently is well spent, I decided to study the effect of writing chapter summaries while reading independently. Will this practice improve a student's comprehension? How does writing chapter summaries while reading independently in a middle school classroom affect accelerated reading progress? Will students who participate in writing summaries while reading independently show growth through the accelerated reading progress testing? For this research, my participants consisted of a convenient sample of 43 8th grade students, 16 boys and 27 girls. 22 of them were Caucasian, 17 African American, 2 were Hispanic, and 2 were Asian. All 43 students attended the Middle School Art Academy and were enrolled in a 90-minute English block 5 days a week. There are several instruments that I was able to use in this study. The first was the STAR Reading Computer Adaptive Norm Reading Test, independent reading material, Post-it note cards, written chapter summaries, completed accelerated reading comprehension quizzes, students' independent reading log, and the teacher's class reading log. There were several steps to this research process. First, I administered the STAR pretest, which provided me with a baseline reading level score for each student in the study. The students were able to take this test in the library. When we returned to class, the students were able to choose their own reading material. Once each student had their own novel, they were given an independent reading log. I was able to review the log with the students and explain how the log was to be completed each day in class and at home. Students were then given a packet of sticky notes and were told to place one after each chapter of the book they were reading. I explained to them how to write a chapter summary. The students practiced with the first chapter and then showed me the completed summary of chapter 1 of their novel. Through this conferencing, I was able to give each student feedback on their writing at this time. The students' reading and writing was tracked each week using a class log. On this log, I was able to monitor the rate at which each student was progressing with their independent reading, and I was also able to skim their chapter summaries when meeting with them during these conferences. As students completed their novel, they were able to take the accelerated reading test on the computer, which tests for comprehension of the book that they have read. This test gives them a score that indicates whether they fully comprehended the novel or not. Students recorded the score on their independent log and then went on to search for another novel to read. At the end of the 9-week period, students returned to the library to retake the STAR test, and these results were used as a post-test score. Data from the 43 8th grade students who participated in the study was evaluated by using a paired 2-sample t-test. Looking at the pre- and post-test, the results showed that the pre-test scores had a mean of 7.11 with a standard deviation of 2.0, and the post-test scores had a mean of 7.33 with a standard deviation of 2.1. The t-value with a DF of 42 was 2.01 and the p-value was 0.28. The results suggest that writing chapter summaries while independently reading did not impact a student's reading comprehension. Even though it may look as though there was a little growth, the results did not show a significant enough difference to prove that it was the actual writing of chapter summaries that improved these reading scores. Writing summaries during reading did keep students engaged while reading. and qualitative data from student work did show an increase in participation of accelerated reading. This was shown in the number of tests students were taking after completing their novels. The writing skills of students also showed an improvement, which was evident by looking at the difference in students' writing at the beginning of the study versus the end of the study. Further research of the limitations of the study should be conducted before accepting these findings. The sample size should be expanded to include all 8th grade students in a regular 90-minute English class. Increasing the sample size would increase the confidence level of the study. The researcher could also have the advantage of adding a controlled group to the study. Increasing the time frame would also add validity to the study. The teacher would then have the time to work with students who are having trouble writing chapter summaries. Because in improving these chapter summary writing skills, this will help students' thinking process and therefore increase their ability to comprehend. The researcher will continue to investigate the use of summary writing and its relation to increasing reading comprehension in hopes of finding a positive correlation between reading and writing about what is being read. Are there any questions?
Did you find that these techniques help certain students?
It helps students who were labeled as multisensory. These students seemed to benefit from this process because they were not only reading and listening to the audio while reading, but they were also writing about what they were reading, which helped them to process the information. Many times these students were also questioning their thinking as they wrote these chapter summaries, and it helped them to understand the story. Any other questions?
Do you think that this technique caused students to not want to read?
Well, I found that students who were avid readers became discouraged by the fact that they had to stop at the end of each chapter and write about their reading. They wanted to read for pleasure, and they couldn't understand why it was so important to write chapter summaries. I noticed some of these students started to read less because they had to write about their reading. This was very discouraging for me and something I plan to investigate further. Are there any other questions? Thank you for your participation.